think just Tim.
Yeah.
And, okay, all right. All right, good afternoon. This is a special called meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections. The date is July 19th. The time is 4:30 PM and we're at 2555 Lexington Road. First item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. Chair will entertain a motion to adopt.
I so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the agenda is adopted. Next item on the agenda is public comment, and it doesn't appear as though anyone is here wishing to make public comment. Probably a relief for you guys. All right, think that. All right, the next item on the agenda is a work session, and the purpose of this meeting is to have a conversation with Clarke County School District Board of Education on how elections and the school district can work together. So, I'm Rocky, I'm the chair of the board, and I just listed the folks with officer titles to introduce themselves, but you can certainly, yeah.
Okay, I'm Lakeisha, I'm the board president, and no, Dr. Anderson may not be able to join us today, but other colleagues are here.
I'm Mark Evans, I represent the 9th District.
I'm Robbie Hooker, I'm the superintendent.
I'm Tish Egger, I'm District 4.
Right. Ms. Till,
Hello.
yeah, this is Ann Till. Hello.
I'm Inka, I'm the vice chair. Good afternoon, I'm Will Fambro, member.
Adam Shirley, I just had moved into Dr. Gant's district, District 7, so.
When they cut you, on the board here.
All right, great. The next, actually, let's introduce staff. Important, most important, you would like to just introduce yourself.
I'm Lisa McLaughlin. I'm one of the election assistants in the office.
I'm Aletha Perkins. I am the administrative assistant. And I'm Audra Taylor, one of the elections assistants.
You too, wish to introduce yourself?
I am Wanda Stevens. I'm an election clerk / area manager. James Howard, I'm also an election clerk / area manager.
Great. So, on the agenda here, we just outlined some high level topics, and the staff is probably gonna do most of the talking, but, your packet, or actually, I'll just let Lisa jump right in there.
Oh, just did, okay.
Yeah, so we'll just start with scheduling, and then, yeah,
You didn't want to have any opening remarks? I think you
it's,
said something about
we're
it.
open.
Okay, you are open. Okay, thank you for coming to meet with us. We really appreciate it. I took over this position in 2019. So I, manage the warehouse and the logistics for elections. So I deal with the schools mostly with Dr. Askew in operations. But I haven't had a chance to talk to any of you guys because that's the way that we usually coordinate how we're going to do elections inside the schools. We just wanted to talk to you about a few things and get your ideas and see how we can better communicate with you. Maybe there's some ways that you guys can communicate better with us. There's a few topics that we want to talk about. The first one is scheduling. So part of your packet is about that. There's the 2024 election schedule. So you will know when the election dates are coming in that year. And there's 5 on the Secretary of State's calendar, but of course, runoffs don't always happen, but at least in my experience since taking this position, they seem to always happen. So those will be the dates next year that we know for sure that we would need to be inside the schools for elections. I apologize. I should have provided you a list of the schools that we hold elections in case you don't already know that information. Would you want to go print out the first page of this? Because it's got the list. Huh? You can just print that first page for everybody. That has the list of all the schools. We are in, I believe it's 11. of the school district buildings. Some of them are in elementary schools, we're in both high schools. And I mean, every election it seems to have gone very well. Sometimes there are little snafus in certain places, but that always happens. So the second thing in your packet for scheduling is the letter that goes out at the beginning of every year. Hi.
Hey, Ms. Davis.
So at the beginning of every year, we send out a letter to everyone, to each of the, to all the locations, but to let them know when the election dates are happening in that year and when they might be used. For Clarke County School District, Dr. Askew had asked that I send one letter to him, and then his assistant distributes it to the schools that are involved, to the administration, and we coordinate in that way. So this is just an example of what we do to start off the year every year to let you know what is coming. The other two are part of a little bit later conversations that we can have about other topics.
The other two
The other two
things
pieces
in
of
the
paper in
packet.
packet.
Okay.
So the first reminder I wanted to talk about is there is a countywide election on November 7th. So that one is going to happen. We weren't sure at the beginning of the year if it would or not. But the county clerk, the clerk of court for Clarke County retired. So she has to be replaced, and there'll be an election for that on November 7th. So we will be in the schools on that day. I think the board would probably agree with me that one of the things that's really important to us is to move in a direction where we're planning this calendar together with you. As far as scheduling the school calendar, if possible, for when in-service days are, so that when we were holding an election and there is supposed to be class time for the children in the school, that maybe those can be scheduled as an in-service day, so that so that the students aren't around, around the polling place where elections are taking place. And that might alleviate a few of the concerns that we'll talk about in a minute. So that's just one important proposal to me. If there's any way that we can do that, I'd like to know how far in advance you guys plan the district calendar to, because we get the Secretary of State's calendar when we get it from the Secretary of State. So I don't know if I can get it on your timeline. But if it's possible, that would be something that I think would be really helpful for everybody.
And I believe there's a code section that spells out when the dates would happen, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, in the code, there are typical dates there are prescribed dates for the typical elections that happen, but sometimes there's special elections, and sometimes, so that they're not all in the
But
code.
it does say a special election could occur
Could
on this
occur on
date
that
if necessary.
Mhm.
You can go into infinity and figure it out in theory.
Right, but we plan our calendars 2 years in advance.
Do you?
Yes, and you're looking at 5 days of, which will interfere with school time. In my experience in working in other school districts, they do not close down. During the pandemic, we were able to say in the previous district, we could use it as a virtual day for students. I don't know how conducive that would be for us to have 5 virtual days to make that happen. But in most districts that I've worked in, or districts that I know they continue to have school, I know there were some issues with, some of our personnel felt safety issues of people being in the building. We tried to work through that by having security there to ensure that they did not interfere. And I think that was only at 1 or 2 schools, Timothy maybe. And Timothy is the one that had the most crowd. Cleveland did not. You're at Cleveland, am I correct in saying that? Cleveland, Timothy, Central Cedar, Barnett shows. Whitehead, there wasn't a problem at Whitehead. The other schools I did not hear from during that time period because I asked Dr. Askew to go ask the principal. It was mainly concerns from those 2 schools that I heard from, but you're talking about 5 days of asking us to let students out and have that. Most school districts do not have 5 days where it have teacher planning days at the beginning of school, pre-planning, but not throughout the school year.
One of the days usually occurs, well, it occurs in June, so the general primary runoff would be after school is
Yeah,
out.
wouldn't be a problem.
So that one, luckily for us, we don't need to worry about that one. I guess, I totally understand that, and I know that it's a big ask. So especially in presidential years,
If it's presidential.
maybe if we could look for the November presidential election.
And we
do
can,
that.
we can work something out and have that as a teacher's work day or something we can accommodate you on that.
So,
If we do that date in advance, it's the first Tuesday of
first
each.
Tuesday in November, and
We plan-
even in off years, if there's a general election scheduled, it's always on the first Tuesday in November. So
Right.
if we could work towards always the first Tuesday in November.
Or at least on even years, right?
And odd.
So there's a special election for clerk.
Sometimes there's a general election scheduled in November in odd years. It just depends.
Yeah, rarely,
But it's happening this year.
it's happening. this year.
Yeah, so like, we didn't think it was at the beginning of the year, and then someone resigned, and so now we're planning for a November election.
Which normally is a smaller number of people vote in a small election.
Yes,
We don't need any real crowd control or
Yeah.
any specific watching.
but a presidential election,
But for
yes,
presidential, election, it's so great a turnout.
yes.
We do begin to have some concerns that people may be straggling around, but as you say, if you all have some security going on, I'm sure we can work something out.
Yeah.
So we can take that.
Well, that kind of takes us
Yeah, we
into
kind of go
security.
right into the next topic.
Okay.
if-
I
I know,
printed copies of this.
Well, may I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Front page for clarity.
it's pretty catchable there.
So I want to be sure I hear what's being asked, that, that November 5th, 2020, well, no, yeah. Is that correct? The November 5th, 2024?
Yes, ma'am.
Presidential.
Yes,
That we, have like a teacher's work day, or is that what's being asked? Okay. And what you're saying is we already have our calendars.
yes, and I'll look November 24th, we have not billed for that would be 24-25 school year.
I thought we had 2 years on.
We did 22, 20, am I right?
We have 23, 24, and 24, 25 on the books.
I think we already have those, and that would require, which is, I guess it just sort of depends on, what the board feels at some point, would require.
Well, the November 5th is already, it's already a work day on the.
Okay, perfect.
So we
Okay,
do.
so it's already, okay.
But I think also it's important to assume there's going to be runoffs in these things. In this day and age, it's almost guaranteed that December 3rd will be a runoff. First, I mean, we all see how elections go these days. They're so razor thin that there's generally a runoff. So if there's any consideration to, is there a way to, just say, oh, school's back on that day, and because we would know week before.
Yeah, but that's easy for you, but that's hard when you're talking about.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. So, yeah.
But I wonder if it may prove like impossible to do, because I think operationally, because we already, like the November 5th, we already have, is that what I understand? You say, Dr. Yeager, but December 3rd, my guess is that there are some concerns that are leading to, for us to try to figure this out. I wonder if we can't alter our calendar, might there be ways that we can like pool our resources, like our security with Athens-Clarke County and with the school district, to like address whatever the concerns may be. I think that may be more feasible at this point than trying to, like determine a week or two before if we can.
Right, and then in the future, when you're planning 26 and so forth, yeah.
But I also would like for us to keep in mind that when it comes to voting, we don't want a real high profile of security guard or police. So that's something that we need to take into consideration also.
But what percentage of our voters have said this is an issue? Because we're here at the table saying it's an issue, so what percentage of our voters have come to us and say, this is a problem? That's why we're meeting, so I just need to know what percentage of our voters have said, this is the issue being at the school and the security. Was it just one person, or are we talking about hundreds, 50, 25 raw numbers?
There's a number of parents from Oglethorpe that have come to our meetings and spoken to us about that, but, if I will, yeah.
The initial conversation wasn't really, I apologize if it feels like it's about, parents complaining about us being in schools. It's not exactly. What I would like for us to do is, when the threat level, I believe, was raised in the school around the election for the December election, and that's why the security was hired. If we could just have communication between each other that like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to put the security guards in the school, the threat level is up. We can alert the poll workers so that they know when the security guards are there, and they can inform the security guards of how they can also help us follow election code. Because at Timothy, I believe it was at Timothy Road that there was the most concerning issue was the security guards didn't want to allow the poll workers to unlock the doors. And once we go into or before 7 a.m., once we go into the precinct to set up, by election code, the doors have to be open for the public to come in and view us setting up. And so that created some tension between the poll workers knowing what they needed to do and the security guards with their instructions, and the administration not understanding what we.
I agree with you. If that takes place, what we can do is have a meeting with our chief of police and the security, and we can take care of that matter at least a week or two in advance before the election.
Yeah.
Disband all of those, so we're on the same page when it comes to that.
That's
Okay.
really good. So another part of the emergency planning that we've done is because after the pandemic, we all learned that things happen and we have to be prepared for them on the fly. So we're also preparing our COOP plan for our department. So we put together.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
What does COOP stand for? Oh, please. Contingency Operation. I'm so sorry. It's an emergency plan for
Okay.
what to do in case your operations are interrupted. Okay, and I'm so sorry that I don't know that it's off the top of my head. But we've been preparing our plan, and this is part of it. And it was basically to instruct our poll workers at each location what to do in case of different types of emergencies and how to work with the administration and the facilities. So I apologize that I did not print out more copies of this because I wasn't sure that it would be something you would want to read all 6 pages and keep. But this is our plan for the schools. That was vetted by Dr. Askew.
Yeah, I think this was passed out to us.
Did you get that? Just the first page. I just wanted to have the instant. So earlier in 2022, we had a meeting with all of our partners in emergency response. So the police, the sheriff's department, the fire department, Dr. Askew was there to go over this so that we're all on the same page about what would happen in case there was an emergency in a polling location, like a weather emergency. You know, what do our poll workers do with the voters that are now in the building during a tornado? What do they do if there's an active shooter? So we're just trying to be on top of all of those things so that we all work together within each type of location that we're in.
When was that meeting again?
It was back last spring. There's an implementation date on that procedure, and it was right.
Wasn't the meeting where Will and I were the ones in attendance?
Yeah, at the planning building with everything.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
I don't remember.
I don't remember.
It was 2022, May 18th.
Yes.
Will we have another meeting before we start the cycles of election for 24, similar to this?
I had not planned to.
I think it's
Because
good.
our procedure hasn't changed at all, so it would just be to reach out. I just plan to reach out through email.
All right, so as superintendent, can I have a copy of this so that I can review it with
You
our cabinet and others so that we'll know, and principals will know what to do in emergency or something?
Yes, and Dr. Askew, I was under the impression that Dr. Askew had submitted that to all the schools.
I came in October, so this meeting happened in 22, so I wouldn't have wind of it.
Okay,
And I wonder if it may be possible, like logistically possible, since I think what I hear is that, Dr. Hooker said that he would meet with the chief of police just so that everyone is on the same page before we get into like the election year. I wonder if it might be possible to have, maybe not that same meeting, but a meeting of sorts again, you know, just to be sure when we kick off this year's, dates, everybody is on, like, sort of, you know, addressing chief of police, but then also all of the other people that you mentioned, the principals and things like that, just so to be sure that there is not a breakdown in communication and that all of the building administrators are.
And I think, and I've experienced this myself, that all the principals are not uniformly cooperative.
We can make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of
We
them
don't
want
have
to
to
have
that. We can
one
make that happen. If you give
in
it
the
to
same room that voting is happening.
we can work with principals on best practices for doing them in election time period.
And
And
so,
And I just want to reiterate one thing that Ms. Willis said is the presence of excessive security at these schools is not an optic this board wishes to have. So, I'm sure that most people can understand why, but that is something we wanted to find the happy medium of how do we have a good security emergency plan and not have cops lined up in the parking lot.
We wouldn't have cops lined up.
I know.
Necessarily, security type folks, not necessarily the police there to monitor this, but if there's issues, you said it was Oglethorpe, I only heard from Timothy Road. I don't recall hearing anything from Oglethorpe parents nor staff during that time period. If that's an issue with them, could we move it to a different site? If they have that much along, that they didn't bring it to the board's attention, were you made aware of it?
So,
we talking about moving to a different site.
yeah, we're in the middle of that and we've been working on that for 8 months. We can't just
Yeah.
move it to a different site, which is a whole other conversation, but,
but I do think concretely, it would be, I think prudent for all of us to be in the same room and hear the same thing. From principals to, I can't remember the individuals that were at the meeting in May, but just to be sure that before we hit that very first, March 12th date, everybody is on the same page about what is gonna happen, what is the emergency operations plan, what is expected of the principals, all of that, to try to at least
Yeah.
prevent some of what may have happened.
and bring the county folks in, the fire people and the police and the PIO and.
okay, so Dr. Gant, just let me make sure that I understand. So you're talking about including the principals that are involved also?
If Dr. Hooker is open to that, I know that
We can work through it.
he mentioned that he would be working with principals anyway to be sure they're on the same page. But I think what I'm putting my finger on is that there was a breakdown somewhere in communication is what I sense you're saying. And so,
Just a little, because we didn't know that the security guards were there until election morning when we started getting calls that, from our poll workers, like, hey, what's going on? And then a couple of calls from the public, why aren't the doors open? Why are they telling me?
And then that turned into violation of election code and then, it's just.
and so I just think it's easier to have the source, like all of us in the room so that we can maybe prevent it and just have a seamless plan.
And I take ownership for that, and I'll tell you why. When the teachers brought it to our attention at Timothy, that they were concerned about I went to the chief and said, hey, we need a security person over there to help direct. So from now on, I need to be in contact with you to alert you as well. It was brought to me by a staff member. That's why I quickly addressed it by saying, let's have security. And we got to.
As a parent
Communication.
of a Timothy student, I appreciated that, but on this side of the table, it was a little frustrating too, so,
Okay.
I can see.
I think Dr. Gant has a great idea. As a board member, I don't have any objection to that, and that will be a board decision. I don't know about my fellow board members, but I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
Would this be something possible after the first of the year? Like as it gets closer, so people are more aware,
Yes, if the election is on November, our first election is on November the 5th, we need to have this in late September in order.
I thought you were talking about the 2024 election year. I apologize.
Well, the first election, and I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the presidential
It's the
election.
March, it's.
Yeah, I think the mark, there's gonna be like 900 people.
Yeah.
In November. Yeah, I mean,
Could Aletha and I work with your office in on a date in January? When, because I think the majority of the people that would be coming would be from CCSD.
We can make it happen.
Okay.
If you work with Ms. Lisa Palmer, we'll make it happen.
I'm just noting that March 12th is a normal school day, but May 21st is an early release from high school.
Mm.
It's like, it's a little complicated.
Yeah, big and early release and all that. So those are things we can discuss. And how do we? work that?
I mean, the parking would be crazy. People are coming on.
so the next item, on the list is communications. I think we've kind of already touched on that, but does anyone else have any?
I just want to take a moment to explain to the board how we normally do communication, especially for Dr. Hooker. What normally happens is, at least for logistics, I contact, Dr. Askew and his assistant, with an email that's similar to that letter that you have in your packet. And then after that, I sent, once they acknowledge that the elections are all occurring on those dates, yes, we received this letter. Then I, also respond to, Dr. Askew with a list of all of our polling managers at each location and the current custodial contacts that we use at those locations, like this is the person who talks to this person at this location. They work with the school administrators to update the custodial portion of that list, and it comes back to me. And at that point, the communications go to our area managers. We have 4, and they have 6 polling locations apiece. And then they begin to deal exclusively with their polling locations, the contact at the school and their polling managers. Sometimes they're talking to the administration in the beginning, and then after that, they're mostly talking to the custodial contacts.
Is it possible, could you CC me on those emails?
Absolutely.
Anything else anyone wants to add about communications?
I think it's going well.
I mean, sometimes I feel like that works well. It cuts down on the amount of information, and it makes sure from CCSD operations point of view that everyone is getting the same information. But sometimes it seems like there's a breakdown with the school administrators that maybe they don't really get the right information sometimes, or they don't put it in the forefront of their mind, and they're like, oh, yes, we do have an election that day. And it seems to be a surprise sometimes. So we have worked with HB Stroud to alleviate their concerns about when we deliver equipment so that it doesn't interfere with the bus schedule and the car rider lane and those kind of things, when the poll workers will set up equipment, that's part of the next.
Yeah, so other,
On that kind of, like, is Dr. Askew your go-to if there's an emergency, say what happened with security? Just you call him, that's okay.
next item is equipment security. And I'm sure Lisa will touch on this, but, the equipment has to be locked and secured the night before. And,
Okay.
yeah.
So typically, we are in the schools from midday Monday, sometimes late morning, until Wednesday, mid-afternoon, when the equipment can be picked up. So we've got that period of time when our equipment is there, poll workers are there, voting's going on, equipment's picked up. From the time that the equipment is delivered, it has to be kept in a secure locked room, which means sometimes that's not possible, when there's classes going on in the gymnasium or food being served in the lunchroom. So in all the schools, we've been able to make arrangements for the equipment to be held in a locked closet, in a locked classroom, somewhere where it can be taken care of until the poll workers can get there after all the students have left and set up the equipment. And then when the building is locked down, they can lock the actual room that the equipment is in and leave and come back the next morning and hold the election. Otherwise, they have to get there even earlier on election morning, which is more like between 5 and 5:30, to actually take an hour or more to set up all of the equipment in the location that morning. And then after voting is completed at the end of the night, they take it down and either leave it packed up in the locked room where voting took place, or they put it back into the locked space that they were given to secure the equipment until we pick it up.
So.
That was all of that part.
Okay.
Just so that everybody understands what happens. One of the schools in particular that it's not possible to set up is Clarke Central High School. Because we use the lobby of the gym, and that gym is used for various things, and there's no way we haven't found a way to adequately secure the equipment, so it gets locked in another space, but inside the gym until that morning.
Is Ms. Turner still the person who's in charge of that side? Turner, she used to, when I was principal at Clarke Central, I think Ms. Turner used to be the oversight person.
Oh, the pool manager?
Yes.
It's currently a lady named Mary Songster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we have a change.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Trying to still works, Bobby still works.
Okay.
Change.
Are you saying that there's a problem in that the schools are not providing you a locked space?
No, we're all good with that now. It took some talking. A few of the locations were, and I understand we're intruding on their main purpose and what they're doing, and sometimes that's really hard to work around. So we completely understand that. And then at the same time, we have to adhere to election code, so no one questions what we did, and we don't have to go before our state elections board and then explain why our equipment was not secured the way it was supposed to be. So we've had good conversations with everybody, and they all provide places for us. Yeah.
Great.
And thank you very much for that.
Next item is voter education for the students.
Okay, this one is exciting. Lately, in part of our own strategic plan in the department, we've built in voter education seminars and classes and programs. And one of the things that we recently did was create a voter history project for elementary school students. And we went to Winterville Elementary and presented that to the second graders. And then out of that, we were asked to go to a different summer camp and present the same thing. But it was really well received, and those are things that we would love to do in the schools more. We can tailor those to elementary, middle school, high school kids. I think the earlier that they learn, the more they learn, the more they're exposed to, the better off we are. Watching the second graders' faces light up when we told them about, hey, wait a minute, once upon a time, someone who looked like you couldn't vote, or once upon a time, someone who looked like you couldn't vote, and they were like, especially for the second graders. So it was a really nice program for them, and we explained to them how those laws came about and how the changes came about. For high schoolers, when a person turns 16 years old, if they're a resident of the county, they can become a poll worker. And in 2020, we launched a program for high school poll workers and worked really hard towards that, and had about 20 high school students. Most of them were from, no, neither one is the other, the community, no. Career Academy, thank you, Ms. Will. They were from the Career Academy. Well, we spent a lot of time recruiting there, but we also had them from the other two high schools too. That was a really successful program. All of them now have aged out of high school, and we would love to get that going again. They seem to really enjoy it. We've had a few who have stayed and are in college now, and one in particular who's a poll manager and just loves it and works every single election. So, and it's a great way, it's a great civic activity for their college applications. It's just great for them to go ahead and learn what it's like to be a voter and what it takes to make that happen. And we would love to partner with someone within the high schools to do that, either someone in the social studies department, whatever department that you feel is appropriate to work on that project together.
That would be Ben Smaller. He's the social studies coordinator for the high schools, for the secondary. He'll be willing to work with you on making that happen.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's like, that program is like a baby of mine, so I would really love to see it build back up with more high school students.
Can I ask about the second grade stuff?
Yes.
Is it been aligned with curricula and all of that sort of stuff?
We were not that formal about it. If that's something that you guys would like us to do, we certainly could.
As a professor of education in social studies, I would love for us to collaborate, especially since I am doing a social studies class this fall, where we could help you with that.
Oh, I would love
We
that.
could align that.
Yeah, we worked really hard to vet all of the information that we gave them so that we made, absolutely sure that we were giving them accurate information and age appropriate information for the second graders.
That we can help with the alignment, if that's our review.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
Great. And we include then small.
Okay.
Just not this October and November. We are already overrun with things going on.
But you do have curricula already developed that.
We have one program developed and we can, tailor it to, to older students or to younger students, but right now it's mainly targeted towards like 1st through 4th grade.
Wonderful.
So you're gonna look at that?
For the 16-year-olds who were in the junior poll work, how was it they introduced to the schools, or how did they apply for it? Or how did they hear about it?
We came to the schools. It was during the same time that we were launching the brand new voting equipment in Georgia. So we took voting equipment for demonstrations and set up in the lunchroom area of the Career Academy especially. And just talked to the students as they came by. We had a small planned program for them where we did talk to them about what it was like to be a poll worker, what it's like to vote for the first time. And then we instructed them how to apply. And they become part-time employees of Athens-Clarke County. So they have to apply through the Athens-Clarke County website.
And you said once they're 16?
Which is wild that you can work the polls when you're 16. You can't vote.
Right.
So,
No, they actually.
I didn't either.
18.
They can't execute us over there.
It's pretty good money for a 16-year-old too.
It really is.
Yes.
15, 60 an hour. And, they work a few elections and once they're seniors and they're capable, I'll put them in as assistant manager and there you go.
with all that, are y'all doing, making voter registration possible when you are one of the high schools?
We did. We provided voter registration that day for the people who were about to turn 18.
I wonder if we could make that a regular thing at least on the even years, on the major election years, where allowing them to go to the 2 high schools, do a presentation on becoming a voter, but also setting up for registration for the students to be able to do those things.
Yeah,
And that,
17 and a half.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're 17 and a half,
It's gonna be 18 by
Yeah.
election time, you can register.
yeah.
Jesse Evans in Cedar Shoals, he does that with his civics class.
Yeah.
That's a part of his regular curricula every semester, so.
Yeah, but I guess if it was something that was set up in the cafeteria through the Board of Elections, it'd be reaching every single student, not just through certain
It
teachers.
was in the cafeteria when I went to Park Central. I went back for another reason, but they were set up in the lobby there and they had it, whoever did it had it all set up so that every student coming through.
there's usually, an organization that comes through. So I've been in high schools, from Clark Central to Henry to Social, that would come in and set up before that and do that for students. Usually it's a fraternity, it's a sorority group that have done that, and they get tremendous turnout. Students were very interested.
It sounds like it would be
Yeah.
something possible
Yes.
to set up with the high schools.
Yes.
In addition to all of, all of the other things.
There's community leaders who do that.
Yeah, that would be right.
I really didn't have anything else.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. Any other board members?
I'd just like to ask you all, is there any particular concern you all have about holding elections in schools?
From my standpoint as a superintendent, I have no problems with it.
I feel that way, and, except for a few parents who have had legitimate concerns about it. I see it as an opportunity for some of the high schoolers to learn about civic engagement. Maybe you all can think of something in long term where at least on the general election day, the seniors can be involved with it. I don't know, just guiding people in being I haven't thought about it exactly yet, but somehow get engaged with that process and if they're allowed to do that at that age, then maybe we'll have better turnouts down the road.
My years of experience, even from a child, I can recall that they've always been held at schools.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything different.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I know, my neighbor is a teacher at one of the schools and I constantly hear from them, why are you in the schools? Why? And I try to explain, you know, that it's Clark County, there's just no spaces, you know, there's 100 reasons why we've been working on this for months, trying to move some other locations and.
As citizens, we have duties and responsibilities, but also as organizations, we all have duties and responsibilities. And this is one of our responsibilities. To make sure that there is a safe and secure place for us to do what's the most important part of being an American citizen, which is to vote. And we understand that, I think, as a board, and I don't need to speak for everyone, so I'll just speak for myself. I think that the majority of us have an understanding that that is an important role that we play.
That's a rare thought that we encounter in providing places for people to vote. I mean, if you went on the website and you could see the number of meetings and the number of hours that we have spent trying to relocate maybe a polling place that was out of precinct to provide a reasonable amount of driving or walking to go vote with all of the codes that we need to meet to provide these spaces. And we have encountered some stiff competition sometimes that, no, we just don't want people here doing that.
And when you have it at churches, you have people complain.
Anywhere that we've asked.
Even if they're in a tiny little building,
Yeah,
trying to vote, and we get an opportunity to move to a larger building because we have so many people in a precinct, people complain. I just think some people just like to complain.
well,
I wouldn't know anything about that.
I definitely had people, I've had, concerned parents as well. You know, worry about the election days, particularly, I think when it's really, I won't say contentious, because that appears to be but like during like large turnouts, and I think most of it has had to do with school state, like it's somehow in their mind has went into school safety. But I do think if everybody can be on the same page and assure people that we have a safety plan and we've gone, you know, we do this
And-
regularly moving forward, like we meet each year to talk about, you know, the principals on the same page, the superintendent, the schools.
And that was the whole point
Yeah.
of this meeting,
Yeah.
to reassure those parents,
Yeah.
like, we hear you, we understand, I'm a parent too, I have the same concerns. But like Mark said, we have the duty also to fulfill, so.
And I feel like the students getting to start to see us and not just know we're building downtown. It informs long-lasting relationships. Last year, while I was processing absentee ballot applications, some of the ones that came across and they sent it through email and I respond that it was received. Several of those students were my kindergartners and they're now in college. So they see my name and then they would come back and be like, oh my God, Miss Taylor, now I feel safe. I know my ballot's gonna come. And then one would be like, you're not teaching anymore? But that is like I said, from 6 years old, and now they're in their early 20s, and they have a connection, knowing that, oh, my old teachers at the elections office, so we're good. You know, I want them to be able to see the good side of elections and all the positive things we're doing.
You have any?
I'm just thankful. I'm counting the list here, like literally half of our voting takes place in CCSD facilities. And so I'm so thankful that we're able to come together and keep this relationship going. So thank you all so much.
And you're only using half of our schools, so is there a need to, before I offer, but I mean, if there's a need for more, I mean, why are you not using more of our schools? Is it just because of the location?
A good other majority are county-owned buildings. How many private? Do we have 3 or 4?
off the top of my head.
2 churches, the Girl Scouts.
That's, so mine would be 3.
So, you know, it's majority government-owned buildings, so, yeah. And like we moved to a church because they were in the tiny 5-point
Yes, just count.
fire station, like, I don't know, if you've been in that room, it's like
Yeah.
4,
Like this, like
Yeah.
rocks.
but 4 of those in this room, it seems like, so. But, I'd just like to thank everyone for taking their time. I know everyone's busy, we really appreciate it.
Rocky, I did two quick, if you're
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The one other thing is that I thought that as we were going through it, if this could be part of, I guess, the plan that we all meet is that I know, you know, the tapes having to be taped up at the end of the night from the machines, that some buildings, some of the school buildings, it seemed like there wasn't access for them to do it in a window and they were taped outside.
Oh, but that's okay. That meets code. They don't have to
That
be.
meets code? Even
Yeah,
if
they
somebody
just
could
have to
just take them?
off the building. Yeah,
Well, yeah, I guess that my concern with that, if you're taping it outside, somebody could just come by and take them.
yeah, that could be a possibility, but the code just says taped on the door of the building.
Take them.
It doesn't change anything, we have a copy back.
Yeah,
No, I know, but yeah, it just,
It's a holdover from when stringers would go around to each polling
Right.
station to do the.
well, that's, I mean, that still happens.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Um,
one time we had, it was taped to the inner door, not the outer door, so you can see it, but you can't read it.
Oh, because those.
Door and a half away, right.
But usually I would say that they're in the windows, like inside the windows that you can, it's secure, but you can also. Yeah. And then I guess the only other thing just, is it sounded like we were kind of there, but kind of on the, going back to the first day on the schedule, because I do agree, like, obviously the 1st November, the general election, that is by far the largest turnout. Specifically, again, on even years, especially presidential, but also on the other even years because of congressional and Senate races. I guess I wonder if we would consider just making that our policy, but the first Tuesday on even years and future schedules, that we know that that's always going to be the big elections. Because I do think the other ones, for the most part, I mean, much, you know, percentage of this, of a much smaller turnouts than those, but. Because I know we have the next ones, but I guess it's making a policy, like, when scheduling, that's always, you know,
The calendar. Can you say it again, like on the
basically
5th?
having it be a holiday, the first Tuesday on even number of years in November.
Do we,
all years.
yeah, but do we,
I guess you could. I mean, even, because again, odd numbers,
do we have to make that a policy?
oftentimes you're not gonna have, well, it's not policy, but just something that, formalizing that.
Right.
Consideration for the calendar.
Yeah, yeah. We can take
That calendar.
Somewhere that survives this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'd have a lot of parents who might be upset because they have to go to work and, are you saying make that a holiday, a school holiday? Is that what you're proposing?
We can make it a teacher's workday.
Exactly.
That's what we're saying, teacher's
Yes.
workday, not a holiday.
Yes.
You didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Because I think we work on the calendar, we'll start working, well, you all will start working on the next calendar rollout,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a question, it's not on here, but I'm glad I'm here. So, polling places, we're tied to our precincts on election day. Is that gonna continue in the future?
Unless the state, unless the Secretary of State, or well, unless the legislature changes it
Yeah.
and allows us to go to vote centers on election day, have to vote in your assigned precinct.
Unless you vote early.
Yeah, that's what, we have so much early voting. Yeah, exactly. We probably have more early voting than any city our size in Georgia. I make that statement because I don't think anybody else is as progressive as we are about, you know, giving people opportunities to vote.
We've really worked on those items, we really have. Most of our time is spent on making access available for weekends, for evenings, and we diligently focused on, I applaud them for that work effort of just, and having nightmares back from when I was a poll worker and people would show up and they just couldn't understand that line was right here, you know, my neighbor's here, why am I not here? And I then would go into that whole thing of the get over there by 5 o'clock or, you know, whatever, something like that. I was hoping that somehow we were able to, wherever we show up.
It can be done, we just don't have that authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do for early voting.
That's
Right, right.
Well, one reason they don't do it is because if you do that way, you cannot control how many people are going to be with each precinct. What, there are twice as many at one,
Overload.
no one at half the other. We cannot staff it right.
Because we have,
A number according to code.
Yeah.
If we have, 1,000 people that typically vote at this precinct, we have to provide for each 250 people a place, a machine, a setup. So we have codes that we have to go by.
Try not to go over 4,000
Yeah.
in any of our precincts. And if we do, then we have the equipment because of the 250 rule. 250 people to every, station, voting station.
And then we have to consider how many electrical outlets we have, how many square feet do we have, how many doors coming in and out. I mean, there's like mind-boggling factors that go into when we decide this would be good here, this would be good here, it wouldn't work there, but it works great here.
And one of the reasons that we love you guys so much is, most of the time you have good electrical. Because the equipment, am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because most of the equipment is such that it has to have that load, of electrical in order to operate, correctly. So,
And if you don't, I would just like to give a shout out to, I believe his name is Mark Bailey, your
Yeah.
county electrician. He has stepped up to the plate every single time that I've said, we don't have enough here. Oh, it's okay, I'll go put in another circuit. Every time, every time.
I did want to point out, Dr. Hooker, you mentioned that at this time, you asked about how many people we're talking about that are concerned about X, Y, or Z. If it becomes a concern that you are hearing from parents or the community about all these different election days interfering with school operations, you have a luxury that we don't. It's at least as of a couple of years ago, the representatives would come to meet with you, the delegation, I believe, the senators and reps for the state would come and sit with you. They don't do that to us. So if that were to become a concern, then that, if that were the will of y'all's body, that could be something you could ask them. But if they were to, we're one of the few states that do runoffs. And so they could, with a stroke of a pen, make this down to just one.
I'm ready for that.
It could be instant runoff, yeah.
They can, yeah, there's not many
Yeah,
states
we're
that
like-
do it.
Yeah, that's like, well, we're like one of three.
Right, so we
Yeah.
can't stop them,
Only
and
three
y'all can't
states
stop
do
them,
it.
but you can ask the people who can stop them if they will stop them. Just,
The 50% plus one.
if that makes sense.
No, the 50% plus one requirement. So other states do have runoffs, but not with the 50% plus one. If you do the instant runoff, you still have it. It's just you did it all at once. You did your
Yeah,
voting
right.
plus your runoffs all at once.
We just live in a special place.
Yeah.
It would move the entire discussion of pivoting to virtual or canceling gym class for that day because of that being set up, so, anyway, just wanted to put that out there for y'all.
Let's hope we have the next conversation, yeah.
Well, y'all do it well. I've been an observer all around the state and you guys are always top notch whenever I'm.
Thank you.
thank you.
We try hard.
We do have an amazing staff, we're all very lucky.
Yes.
There's one thing I wanted to say though before you adjourn. Our director, Charlotte Sosby, couldn't be here today. She was disappointed about that. She's actually in Washington DC. She's on the U.S. Election Commission's Local Leadership Council. She's one of 2 representatives from the state. So she is there doing that until Friday. So she would have liked to be here, but I know that she would want us to let you know that she's available to you anytime that you want to call her or email her.
thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Any final comments? All right. Next item on the agenda are announcements. We have 2 upcoming meetings, one on July 24th at 4:30 at this location, which is 255 Lexington Road. And then the next one is August 8th. The Planning Commission building, which is 120 West Doherty Street, and that will be our regular meeting. And with that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, do we have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye, meeting gets adjourned. 5:25. Under. Beautiful.